Hi, everyone. Welcome to part 5 of the tour guide training through the UNESCO participation program in Koshrai, Federated States of Micronesia. In this section, we'll be looking at best practices in tourism, looking at customer service, guest interaction, and visitor satisfaction. So as a overview of part 5, we'll look at tourism in Koshrai. We'll look at customer service considerations for visitor experience, including your knowledge as a tour guide, noises, smells, trash that visitors might be sensitive to. And again, this is probably shaped in part by their ideas about resource management, conservation areas that we talked about in the other section. I think a key importance in relation to our discussion of safety is this idea of flexibility. So this idea of managing expectations for your tourists, for your guests who, quite frankly, don't know the situation as well as you do, don't know the trail, don't know the conditions. And so you are going to ultimately be the decision maker, just setting that tone out really early for the guest and letting them know what the situation is. So tourism on Koshrai. Now, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a shutdown in movement of people into the island, and particularly visitors into the island. And, you know, with we'll have to see with COVID-19 now how things may or may not change over time with tourism. But certainly, it's likely we'll start to see more tourism than has been seen in the last year or two. Early estimates by Koshrai State government agencies had an estimated increase in tourism to Koshrai, about 122 visitors a year. This also, and that's with the Mahkontowe Conservation Area. And it would also potentially increase, the estimate was it was going to increase the number of days tourists would spend on Koshrai. So not only are more tourists coming, but the number of tourist days on Koshrai is increasing as well. So, the amount for the economy overall, so visits 6 days instead of 3, that's double the time on the ground. There's been discussion about fees being added in as well, and you know the effects of what this would mean. More tourists coming in, more dollars spent on Koshrai, and increased revenue all around. So your role as a guide is really important in shaping the overall guest experience. Particularly as you're bringing them into the MCA and introducing the area to them. So some general things about customer service. I've worked in customer service in a variety of settings. Some of these have been sort of fun, and some of these have been maybe not so fun. Working in as a volunteer in Great Smoky Mountains National Park and Olympic National Park, that for the most part was a lot of fun. Definitely, and being able to help visitors out. I wasn't necessarily front facing. I wasn't a tour guide. I was in the backcountry doing trail maintenance and these sorts of tasks. But I did interact with visitors. I made visitor contacts. I assisted visitors when I could. And as I was learning, I got assisted by visitors too. So, I mean, it's important to be on the lookout, not only for yourself, but for others as well. So looking at customer service in general, the key aspect of any successful encounter between people is effective communication. This is true in the context of visitor and guide interactions as well. You cannot control everything, but there are some positive steps to make sure that visitors will enjoy their experience and share that enjoyment with others, potentially meaning more visits to Koshrai and more recommendations for your tour services. One of the key disconnects between those providing a service and those receiving a service occurs when the product or experience fails to meet expectations of those paying for the experience. And we talked about that in the context of the safari. We talked about that in the context of these bigger ideas about what conservation management looks like even. So visitors to the MCA may be expecting conservation area guided by principles of wilderness that they see in the United States. Their expectations might not be met to the same extent, but it might be even more so depending on where they live and their overall perceptions. But this is a real opportunity for you as a guide, your knowledge, to educate visitors on Koshrai and the value of the Mahkontowe Conservation Area for locals in terms of continued subsistence practices. So one of the key things is, of course, your knowledge. Tourists may come to Koshrai for a variety of different reasons, including seeing and experiencing natural features of Koshrai, the mountain ranges, the Mahkontowe Conservation Area, the snorkeling, scuba diving, or the cultural sites. But as a tour guide, your knowledge of Koshrai and the MCA, including its cultural and natural history, the environment as a whole, the rules and regulations, will all help tourists to enjoy their experience on Koshrai even more. So you're a real key part in this visitor experience overall. So some things to keep in mind, and of course, I mean, you have to not only manage yourself, but also the group as a whole. And some of this you can frame in terms of like the group enjoyment overall. So in terms of noise, you should generally be available for your visitors and should be able to monitor them for safety. Generally encourage visitors to avoid using music or media in the Mahkontowe Conservation Area. This idea of multitasking and hiking in an unfamiliar environment, or multitasking and trying to look after the safety of a number of individuals that might not be familiar with the area is probably not a good idea. Avoid using cell phone, headphones, other media devices to distract from your ability to interact with visitors. They are paying to be brought to the area, but they also want to hear from you and learn from you as well. And if you're, not available or not perceived as available, that won't be a great thing. Smell, secondhand smoke. In much of the United States today, we don't see too much of this in an everyday context. So just being mindful while on hikes or transporting guests, as this can reduce the quality of their experience. You're breathing the fresh air of the MCA and the cloud forest, and going through all the vegetation, and then you smell cigarette smoke. It takes away from the experience overall. Trash is a general rule of hiking: pack it in, pack it out. So keep the MCA clean by removing all of your trash and the trash of your guests or visitors, as well as any trash that you might find. If you pick up trash, that serves as a modeling behavior for others, who might also engage in that activity. This will likely impress visitors by showing how much you care about MCA and Koshrai overall. It will also reinforce that, following yours idea that preservation, the MCA is a special place that should be protected and respected by all visitors to Koshrai. And here's, where you have to manage expectations, and part of this is, talking about, well, I've been guiding, this many times, or I've gone up into the MCA, or I've lived here, this many years, and I've seen these conditions. So you're framing yourself as the expert. You're going to direct people in and out of the MCA, and you're going to do so safely. Now, they might have different expectations, right? And this idea of the customer is always right, or the customer gets what they want. But this should not trump safety considerations. So if you're seeing someone struggling on a hike and the group is getting stretched out, and someone really wants to go for the peak and it's getting late, you have to make the call overall about maybe it's time to turn around. So you're not struggling to get down out of the MCA during night. You also potentially not, you got to follow those regulations too and protect visitors. So visitors might not be able to summit a particular mountain on a particular day, but completion of all hikes should be subject to your call as the expert of this particular location. So this should be made clear to visitors so you can manage their expectations from the very beginning. Again, you might even put it on the contact information form that you have for visitors. So promotional materials and statements from guides, that's you, hotel operators, NGOs, and government offices should also reflect this statement. These are, you're hiking in an uncontrolled natural environment that can change rather quickly and go from relatively nice and safe to less so. So this part 5, we talked about tourism in Koshrai in general. I highlighted some customer service expectations, and we looked at some considerations in the visitor's experience. So your knowledge, which I would think is probably the most important thing. Again, you're serving as an ambassador for Koshrai as well as the Mahkontowe Conservation Area. Be mindful of the noise, smell, trash of you as well as the group as a whole, and then really letting the tourists know about the flexibility in managing their expectations. That becomes really important. And some people won't be happy about that, but I think most people will. And I've seen that on tours where there is a fair degree of misunderstanding and not being happy. And then most people are just, yeah, okay, that's right. You're protecting us and it's the right thing to do. So a couple questions to think about. Take some time to write out your responses based on your notes on this particular presentation, as well as the tour guide training manual. What have your experiences been with visitors to Koshrai? Maybe how has that varied depending on what country they're from? And what are their expectations? And have these been met while visiting Koshrai? And then what could you do as a tour guide to potentially give better experiences for the guests into the MCA?